In this video, I'm going to discuss some of the things that I wish I knew before becoming a full-time artist, because there are a lot of things about this career that I didn't envision. What I did envision was sort of a romantic view of what it's like to be an artist. You know, it's kind of like thinking that I'd be in the studio painting all the time and I would just get to live this interesting creative life and I'd be free to follow my whims and just create and explore and focus on whatever I wanted in my artwork. And it is like that to a certain extent, but it's not the view that you see of an artist in the movies when you're watching movies about an artist. It's not really like that. The first thing is that I spend more time trying to sell my art than I do making art. And this at first was kind of disappointing to me. I didn't realize just how much effort it would take to sell my artwork. And this is how it is for all artists who are full-time artists, unless you may be lucky enough to get so famous that the sales just all of a sudden start rolling in, but you have to promote yourself to get famous. So even the really famous artists, a lot of them, if you really look into their life story, they get famous later in their life or maybe even after they pass away. And so they work for many, many years, decades on building their self as a brand and as an artist, because really when you look at yourself as an artist, you are a brand. Some artists don't want to see themselves as that and see that what they're making is a product that they're selling, but it is. And so all of the things that traditional businesses do to market themselves, artists also need to do. And so businesses normally have people who help do their marketing, but unless you're a sole proprietorship and you're doing everything yourself, but most artists, we're just trying to do this all ourselves. We're making the art, we're selling the art, we're marketing ourselves, you know, we're our salespeople, our production staff, we're everything. And so for me, it was an eye-opener when I got into this to realize, you know, that 75% of my time was spent not making art if I wanted to be successful. The second thing that I wish I knew before becoming a full-time artist is that with your art, okay, just because you like it, it doesn't mean that it's going to sell. And this kind of goes back to something that I touched upon just a second ago by saying, look, you know, a lot of artists don't look at their artwork like a product, but it really is a product. And I've created a whole video talking about how to make art that sells and looking at your artwork like a product. So if you would like to watch that video, I've posted a link in the description area down there so you can find it. So I'm not going to go into a huge detail on making an art product that sells, but it is an eye-opener to know that, you know, you're going to make lots of stuff and people aren't going to buy it if you're following only your artistic desires and whims. And that's where, you know, back when I said like the romantic view of what I thought an artist would be, for me, if I want to be successful, I do market research. It's very analytical. And I've developed over time a product that sells, and it's also a product that I enjoy making. So I'm not saying that I don't enjoy making the animal paintings, because I do. I love animals. All of you who follow me on YouTube and on my social networks know that. So I love animals and I love celebrating the little beautiful souls that they are. But like, I have developed this product too that sells over time, and I've refined everything that I do so that it is something that people will buy. So I've kind of had two tracks, you know, going in my mind as I've been producing and creating art. It hasn't been just only what I want to create. And I've created a lot of work too that over the years that people don't buy. And so that's how I know what to create more of, is when people start buying it, I create more of that. I mean, it's kind of a simple process, but a lot of artists don't do that. So it is something that I wish I knew. The third thing I wish I knew was about the gatekeepers in the fine art industry. And you don't realize this going into it, but okay, there's all these fine art fairs out there that are really good. And if you can get into them as an artist, you will sell lots. You'll make like, you know, $5,000, $10,000 in a weekend. And this is a lot of money for an artist. And so you want to get into these fine art fairs. But what people don't realize, like the average person going to these events, is that there's a huge amount of artists. Everybody applies to these things. It costs $30 usually to apply, you know, 25 to 30 bucks for each application fee to each fine art fair. And there'll be like 1,000 artists apply, maybe like 200 spots or something like that, or 150 spots. And so inevitably only a portion of the artists will get accepted. But what people don't realize is that it's not just based on the level or quality of your work. It's also based on who they kind of already have going to the event when it comes to their artists. Because a lot of these events, for example, I make animal art, so they're not going to have 5 animal artists there. They're just not going to do it. And if they already have somebody who's been going, like another artist who's been going and vending at that event for like 10 years, and they have a really good repertoire with the event, and so like they've won awards at the event in the past and things like that, and customers like them, and they're an animal artist, well then it's going to be really hard for me as someone who's never gotten into the event to actually get a spot in that event. People don't realize that. It's like I always have customers like, why don't you do this event? Well, I applied for 5 years in a row and I never got accepted. and it's the harsh reality of being an artist. You will apply to so many things like galleries, shows, and all sorts of stuff, and it's just rejection, rejection, rejection. And so you have to develop a thick skin, and you have to realize that there are gatekeepers, and you know what? It might not even be the quality of your work. It might be something else, another factor, like another artist that they like better personally. You know, it might not have anything to do with you. And so it's the luck of the draw on some of these events. That really sucks. If you're trying to make a living and be able to count on making a living, fine art fairs is not something, like getting into them is not something that's guaranteed. And then also once you go there, it's not guaranteed that people will buy your work. So there's a lot of like unknowns to that. And for me, I found it really frustrating and disheartening that I kept applying. And man, I go to these events, the ones that I get into, and I'm one of the top sellers there always. And so I'm like, why can't I get in when people buy my work? But it's this crazy thing. Like I don't know. Nobody knows. You can try to make assumptions about why you think they don't let you in, but you just don't get in a lot of the time. So for me, I need reliable income. And if I don't know on any given year if I'm going to be able to get into the 5 art fairs that I apply to, then I have to just apply to like 50 of them and hope that I can get into, you know, the 5 that I need to get into or whatever. And, you know, it makes it kind of a rocky path to navigate with having any expectations of what your income will be on a given year. And so that's why I have stopped doing a lot of the fine art fairs that have all the hoops to jump through. And I do craft fairs now because I'm guaranteed to get in. And so I know I can go there, and I make just as good of money at those as I do the fine art fairs. And so I don't judge where I go from the standpoint of the elevation of what people think of the work that's there. You know, because like a lot of people with craft fairs have a bad attitude toward it, especially fine artists. And I think it's beneath them to sell their art at a craft fair, but I don't care. Money's money to me. So, but yeah, and I didn't know that when I went into it. I didn't know that I would become a craft fair artist. And it's just out of necessity because, you know, there aren't as many gatekeepers for the craft fairs. And same people go to all the events. You know, it's the same people who live there. So another thing that I didn't realize going into all of the art fairs and the craft fairs was the amount of money, like the startup cost that I would need to do these things. These events are very expensive. Typically you have to buy your booth like 6 months ahead of time. So, and the booths are like $450 for the smallest booth. They can go up to like $1,500 or $2,000. It can be very expensive. And so if you're gonna do, let's say 20 events throughout the year, if you really wanna hit it hard and make really good money. So then if you think about it, you know, $500 minimum times 20, I mean, this gets to be a lot of money that you need to pay for 6 months to a year in advance. And a lot of the events I do, the biggest ones, I have to pay for my booth a whole year in advance to secure my good booth space because, well, you know, they say location, location, location. And at these big events, location really matters. And so anyway, so I have money tied up for a whole year in advance of any of these events. And so you're gonna have to have like $5,000, $10,000, $15,000 to just tie up in your booth fees before you actually even get there to make the money. And you need that money to kind of, it's your you know, seed money that you just constantly have to have out to all these events. And I didn't realize that going into it. And man, my first year doing all these art fairs, I barely made any money because I had to buy the first year's event, like on a credit card, fees and stuff ahead of time. So then I had to pay that back. I had to earn that money. Then I had to pay for the next year's booth fees out of that same event money. And so I was basically paying double the booth fees on everything my first year to like get into it. And yeah, I barely survived the first year. But after that, it was gravy. So it was worth it. But going in, I wish I would have known just how much infrastructure I needed. Also with like having the art fair booth, because your art fair booth stuff, it costs a lot. It's like, $2,000 to $4,000 to get a proper art fair booth set up. One that won't leak in the elements, like if there's rain and everything. And then you need business liability insurance as well, because what if something falls on someone in your booth and they sue you? And most of the good large events require you to have liability insurance, and so then that costs extra money. There's just all these things. You have to have a van to haul everything in. Before I started doing art fairs, I didn't have a van. I drove a car. And for me, I have to pay people to actually set up my tent and help me, because I can't lift anything over 5 pounds. So it's a lot of money. A revolving door of money is kind of what I like to think of it. But I mean, the upside, it's so lucrative that it's worth paying all this stuff out, but you have to have a lot of money to get it going, so that way it'll actually work out and you can reap the benefits later on. The last thing that I wish I knew before becoming a full-time artist is that, okay, you do everything right, right? You work so hard to make a product that will sell, and you work so hard to build up the infrastructure of your business, and then you do all this stuff and you're successful. And then people start stealing your art. Because if they realize that you have something that sells, well, they don't want to do the work themselves, they just want to copy you. So what I've noticed is after I've created what I've done, I've had people literally stealing my images off the internet and then printing them using different printing companies. They've been doing this internationally a lot. And then I have to go through lawyers and copyright complaints and all this stuff to get it stopped. So that also, costs money, and it's an added hassle to just threaten these people and everything. It's stressful, and it really sucks, because once you have success, people copy you. And so then not just that they steal, so that's the stealing, because there's straight up theft. And then there's people who will see a painting that I made and they love to write me a letter and say, oh, I saw this painting you made and look, I made a copy of it. Aren't you so proud? It's such a compliment to you. And I know this might seem snarky to some of you who do this, as me being an artist saying this, but I really take offense to people copying my work, even if they're doing it for fun, because that's money that I lost. That was my idea, my hard work, and they take it and they copy it. Or I had this one person contact me saying that they were going to teach a whole bunch of children how to do my art style, and that they were charging money for courses, and like it was supposed to flatter me or something. And it doesn't. This was money that I lost because you stole my idea and my hard work to develop this product. And on the flip side, all the copycats will never make artwork the same as me, because they're not me. It'll never be with my style. But it is frustrating going into it. I didn't realize that once I worked so hard to develop something, that I would just start getting ripped off, and copycats. And I didn't realize that how people, when they do copy my work and they're so proud of it and they want to show me what they did, it's like, I don't think that they get it. That, hey, like, instead of you buying a print, you went ahead and just looked at my work and copied it. And some of these people who copy them, they sell them. I see them selling them on Etsy. And it's a painting they made this of, like, for example, of my cat, And it's like, I take a really big offense in that, because this is my cat that they just stole and that they're selling and making money off of. They have no permission or right to do it, but there's nothing I can do if they're making the artwork themselves by hand and they change it just a little bit. It's really hard for me to dispute that. But all in all, I mean, despite all of these negatives or things that I could have prepared for better, I love being a full-time artist. I mean, of course, every job that you get and every job that you do, there are going to be things that you don't necessarily like about it, or that you wish you kind of knew more about going into it so you could prepare better. But I love being an artist. It is the most fun, rewarding career that I've ever had so far, and I mean, it's my passion. Making paintings are my bliss, you know. It's the funnest thing for me to do. And I also love the business side of it too. And so some of it, you know, even though they're negatives to spend so much of my time promoting myself versus actually making art, I've grown to really enjoy the business side of it. I didn't know that I would like running a small business in a retail kind of business. I didn't know that I would like that going into it. I didn't even think it was part of being an artist. But now knowing that, I really like running a small business. It's fun. I love figuring out all the marketing stuff. You know, so I mean, yeah, I don't like it when people steal my stuff, you know, or copy my work that I worked so hard to develop. But you know, I mean, so there's a give and take with it. But all in all, I mean, being an artist is awesome. So I'm not trying to dissuade anyone from being a full-time artist, but I am trying to paint more of a realistic picture of what it's like. Because some people, you know, you'll see the movies where it's like the starving artist and all this stuff, and they just live this tortured existence, or they live the high life because they made it big. And you know, my reality is neither one of those spectrums. My reality is that I can live a really good middle class life, earn a very good middle class living, and it's reliable and I can count on it. I'm not a starving artist, but I'm also not, you know, a famous rich artist either. You know, it's more of a realistic view of what being an artist full-time in this day and age will probably be like for most people. All right, well, I would love to hear your thoughts. Thank you so much for watching. I'll see you next time.